Hey guys! Tonight, we begin with something particularly grim, even by historical standards. We're peeling back the toga on ancient Rome, not to look at the emperors or the gladiators in their shining moment of glory, but at one of society's most necessary, yet utterly reviled figures. We're diving into the grim, dangerous, and not so glamorous world of the Roman public executioner, and why your modern sensibilities, and probably your stomach, you wouldn't last a single day in their blood-soaked sandals. Forget any notions of a stoic, respected official upholding justice. The reality was far messier, far more isolating, and infinitely more disgusting. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It lets me know I'm on the right track with these deep dives into the darker corners of history. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world, sharing this slightly unsettling journey. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together, into a Rome you rarely see in the movies. Congratulations. You've just woken up, and your first sensation isn't the gentle Roman sun, but the damp chill seeping from the stone walls of your hovel. It's located, by law and social decree, outside the city's sacred boundary, the Pomerium, or perhaps crammed into the worst, most disease-ridden slum within the walls, a place where even the rats look unwell. You live where the city discards its refuse, both human and material. There's no artisanal bread and olives for you. Your breakfast, if you can call it that, is likely some stale, coarse bread, maybe a few scraps from yesterday's work. The smell of iron, not from a blacksmith's forge but from dried blood, clings to your clothes, your skin, your very hair. It's a perfume that announces your profession long before you do. Forget about popping down to the local forum for a bit of gossip or a friendly chat with the vendors. You are the carnifex, the fleshmaker, a title that sounds more like a butcher of animals than an officer of the state, and that's precisely how most people see you. Your presence is considered polluting, a bad omen. People will cross the street to avoid you. Mothers will shield their children's eyes, and even the toughest legionary might spit on the ground after you pass, just to ward off the ill luck they believe you carry. There's no HR department to complain to about workplace harassment, no union to protect your rights. In fact, you have very few rights to speak of. You are an instrument of the state's grimmest necessities, and like a soiled tool, you're kept apart and used only when needed. Let's talk about your job description. It's not just one task. Oh no, you're a versatile employee of the Roman state's darker side. Your day might involve flogging a disobedient slave until their back is a red ruin. Or perhaps you'll be branding a runaway with a hot iron, the smell of searing flesh a common occupational hazard. Then there's the actual killing. And Rome, bless its efficient heart, had a variety of methods, each tailored to the crime, the social status of the condemned, and the desired level of public spectacle. You need to be proficient in all of them. There are no training courses, no certifications. You probably learned on the job, maybe as an apprentice to your father, because this is often a hereditary profession. Who else would willingly choose this life? So, you rise from your rough cot, the straw poking into your back like the accusing fingers of the ghosts you probably believe haunt you. Your dwelling is sparse. No mosaics on the floor, no frescoes on the walls, just damp, crumbling stone, and the pervasive odor of death and despair. You might have a small shrine to some obscure underworld deity, someone you hope might offer a sliver of protection or at least not actively curse you for your daily tasks. You don't get public holidays off. In fact, public holidays, especially the games, are often your busiest periods. More spectacle, more condemned to dispatch for the entertainment of the masses. The tools of your trade are not gleaming, well-oiled instruments of precision. They are brutal, functional, and often crudely maintained. Your axe for beheadings might be chipped, requiring a second or even a third swing, much to the displeasure of the crowd and the prolonged agony of the victim. Your whips, the dreaded flagrum or flagellum, are leather thongs, sometimes embedded with sharp pieces of bone or metal, designed to tear flesh with maximum efficiency. You have ropes for hangings and crucifixions, heavy mallets, and perhaps a collection of sinister-looking hooks for dragging bodies. Cleaning them is a cursory affair, usually just a wipe down or a rinse in a bucket of dirty water. Sterilization? That's a concept centuries away. Infection is just another way the condemned might suffer. And frankly, no one cares, least of all your employers. You don't walk to work with your head held high. You slink. You try to be invisible, which is ironic given the highly public nature of your ultimate tasks. Perhaps you wear a hood, not for mystique, but to avoid recognition, to delay the inevitable pointing and muttering. But everyone knows who you are. The aura of dread is your uniform. Children who might have taunted you yesterday now fall silent, their games ceasing as you approach the designated place of execution. Perhaps the Esquiline Hill, a notorious spot for punishments, or the arena, for those condemned ad bestias to the beasts, or to fight as unprepared gladiators. And what about your colleagues? You don't really have them in the modern sense. You might have assistants, equally reviled, often slaves or criminals themselves, who do the dirtiest work like handling the corpses or restraining struggling victims. There's no camaraderie, no after-work drinks at the local Caopona. Your social circle is infinitesimally small, likely limited to your immediate family if they haven't disowned you, and perhaps other outcasts on the very fringes of Roman society, grave diggers, tanners due to the smell of their trade, and the like. You are, in essence, a walking embodiment of social contamination. The legal framework that employs you is vast and complex, but your role in it is brutally simple. You are the final, messy punctuation mark at the end of a legal sentence. You don't question the guilt or innocence of those you dispatch. That's not your concern. Your concern is getting the job done as ordered, preferably without inciting a riot from a crowd displeased by a botched execution, or conversely, one too quick and merciful for their bloodthirsty tastes. The magistrates, the governors, the emperor himself, these are the people who sign the death warrants. You just swing the axe, tie the noose, or light the pyre. And you carry the psychological burden of it all, a burden no one in Roman society is willing to acknowledge or alleviate. You are, quite simply, stuck. Now, let's consider the menu of horrors you're expected to serve up. Beheading was often reserved for Roman citizens, as it was considered a more honourable and quicker death. Sounds straightforward, right? But as mentioned, a dull axe, a nervous executioner, that's you, especially on a bad day, or a condemned person who won't stay still can turn it into a hideous spectacle of multiple chops. You're there, wrestling with a severed head, the crowd either gasping in horror or roaring for a cleaner job next time. Fun. Then there's crucifixion. Oh, the Romans loved a good crucifixion, especially for slaves, rebels, and non-citizens convicted of serious crimes. This isn't a quick affair. Your job starts with scourging the victim nearly to death. Then, you or your lovely assistants have to hoist a heavy wooden crossbeam, or patibulum, onto the victim's already lacerated shoulders and make them carry it to the execution site. Once there, you nail their hands, or wrists, to the beam, then hoist the whole assembly onto an upright post. Or, you might tie them. Nailing was more secure, but also more work for you. The feet were then nailed or tied to the post. Death would come slowly, sometimes days later, from asphyxiation, dehydration, blood loss, or shock. And you? You might be tasked with guarding the crucified, to prevent family members from rescuing them or giving them water, so you get to watch for days, in all weather. Imagine the flies. Imagine the smell. What if the condemned is sentenced damnatio ad bestias? Condemnation to the beasts. A crowd favourite in the arena. Here, your role might be less direct but no less grim. You might be responsible for prodding terrified, unarmed people into an arena with starving lions, bears, or wolves. Or perhaps you're one of the arena attendants who has to drag out the mauled remains afterwards, using large hooks. The crowd roars its approval, soaking in the gore. You're just sweeping up the biological debris of their entertainment, the stench of blood and fear thick in your nostrils. Your stomach has to be made of lead. Or you simply learn to dissociate, to see the bodies as mere objects. Not easy, when they were screaming for their mothers moments before. Burning alive was another option, particularly for arsonists. An eye for an eye, or rather, a fire for a fire. Or Christians during periods of persecution. You'd be responsible for building the pyre, securing the victim, and lighting the flames. The smell of burning human flesh is something that, once experienced, is never forgotten. It would permeate your clothes, your hair, your nightmares, and you'd have to stand there making sure the fire did its job, perhaps prodding the body back into the flames if it shifted. The screams would be unimaginable. But you're expected to be stoic, unmoved. A pillar of gruesome professionalism. And let's not forget drowning in a sack, the poena coolii, or penalty of the sack. This was reserved for those convicted of parricide, killing one's own parent. The condemned was sewn into a leather sack, sometimes with a dog, a rooster, a viper, and a monkey, and then thrown into a river or the sea. Your job? Stitching up that writhing, terrified bag of doomed creatures, human and animal, and then ensuring it sinks. Can you imagine the sounds from inside that sack? The desperation? You'd be the last face they see, the one sealing their grotesque fate. So, your daily routine is a cavalcade of suffering. You don't get to choose your assignments. One day it's a relatively clean beheading, the next it's overseeing a prolonged crucifixion or managing a chaotic arena execution. You're on call, essentially. When the state needs someone killed, tortured, or publicly shamed, you're their guy. There's no clocking in and out at 9 and 5. An urgent execution could happen at any time, under any conditions. Rain, searing heat, public festival, the show must go on, and it's always a show. Every punishment is a performance, a deterrent, a spectacle. You are the unwilling lead actor in Rome's theatre of cruelty. The psychological toll must have been immense. We have records of executioners in later periods suffering from what we'd now call PTSD. For you, in Rome, there's no concept of mental health care, no therapy, no understanding colleagues to share a drink with and vent. You're expected to be hardened, unfeeling. But how could you be? Witnessing such extreme human suffering day in, day out, being the direct cause of it, it has to leave scars. Perhaps you drink heavily, if you can afford it, sinking into a stupor each night to blot out the faces, the screams, the smell of blood and burning. Or maybe you become calloused, a shell of a human being going through the motions with a dead heart. Neither option sounds particularly appealing. And the superstitions. Roman society was deeply superstitious. Anything to do with death was considered taboo and spiritually dangerous. You, dealing directly with death, violence, and the bodies of the condemned, are seen as a magnet for restless spirits, curses, and all sorts of malevolent supernatural forces. People believe you have the evil eye, that your touch can bring misfortune. This is why you live on the fringes. This is why you're shunned. It's not just disgust, it's genuine fear. You are a walking, talking contamination. This societal ostracization extends to every aspect of your life. Forget finding a spouse from a respectable family. You'll likely marry someone from a similarly outcast group, if you marry at all. Your children, if you have them, will inherit your stigma. They'll be the executioner's kids, taunted, avoided, with limited prospects beyond following in your bloody footsteps. It's a cycle of marginalization, almost a caste system based on the dirtiest of jobs. There's no upward mobility when your profession is literally to end lives. Let's talk about payment. You're not getting rich doing this. You're an employee of the state or perhaps of a provincial governor. Your wages are likely meager, just enough to survive. However, there were grim perks. Executioners often had the rights to the condemned's clothing, and sometimes even their bodies. This is where it gets even darker. Body parts of the executed, especially those who died violently, were believed to hold powerful magical or medicinal properties. Blood of a gladiator or executed criminal was thought to cure epilepsy. Amulets made from human bone were considered protective. So, you might find yourself in the grisly side business of selling these macabre relics to magicians, desperate invalids, or the merely superstitious. A little extra income, but at what cost to your already battered soul? You're essentially a recycler of human remains. Consider the public nature of your work. Executions were not hidden away. They were public spectacles, often drawing large crowds. You are performing under pressure. Thousands of eyes are on you. They are not a supportive audience. They are there for the thrill, the horror, the grim satisfaction of seeing justice done, or simply for a day's morbid entertainment. If you botch an execution, say, the axe slips and you merely wound the condemned or the noose isn't tight enough, the crowd can turn ugly. They might jeer, throw things, even riot. And your superiors will not be pleased. A messy execution reflects badly on Roman authority, on its power to command and control. You could face punishment yourself for incompetence, a flogging, a fine, or even dismissal, which for someone in your position, with no other skills and a massive social stigma, is a death sentence of a different kind. Imagine the scene. You're in the arena. The sun is beating down. The crowd is roaring. A condemned prisoner, perhaps a captured barbarian warrior, is thrust before you. He's terrified, or defiant, or just broken. Your job is to dispatch him cleanly and efficiently. But he's not a passive sack of grain. He might struggle, plead, curse you. You have to remain impassive, strong, and precise. Your hands must be steady, your nerve unwavering, all while thousands are watching your every move, judging your performance. It's like being a surgeon, but your patient is wide awake, unwilling, and your operating theatre is a public festival of death, no pressure, and the interactions with the condemned themselves. Do you speak to them? Offer a word of comfort, or a swift end? Or are you cold, detached, purely functional? Roman law sometimes allowed for a final request, a last word. You'd be there, the unwilling audience to their final utterances, their pleas for mercy to gods or men, their curses upon their accusers. These aren't abstract legal cases. These are human beings in their last, desperate moments, and you are the instrument of their termination. That kind of intimacy with death, repeated over and over, would surely erode anyone's humanity. Then there's the cleanup. After the beheading, the crucifixion, the burning, someone has to deal with the remains. That's often you and your assistants, dragging headless corpses, prying bodies from crosses, gathering charred bones. These aren't dignified funerals. The bodies of the executed were often denied proper burial rites, further emphasizing their shame and outcast status even in death. They might be thrown into common pits, like the puticuli on the Esquiline Hill, or left for wild animals. You're the last person to handle them, the one who closes the final, sordid chapter. How do you even get into this line of work? As mentioned, it was often hereditary. Your father was an executioner, his father before him. You're born into it, with no other path available. Or you might be a former criminal yourself. your own life spared on the condition that you take up this despised role. Perhaps you're a slave, assigned this duty by your master. There's no career fair where Roman executioner is a booth you willingly visit. It's a profession of last resort, of social doom. You're not climbing any ladders here, unless it's the one to adjust a noose. Think about the sheer physical strength required. Hauling crosses, restraining struggling victims, swinging a heavy axe or mallet repeatedly. This isn't a job for the frail. You'd need to be robust, imposing. And yet, despite this physical presence, you're socially powerless. A strange paradox. You hold the power of life and death in your hands, delegated by the state, but in the eyes of society, you are less than nothing. You are a necessary evil, and the emphasis is always on the evil. The Roman state prided itself on law and order, pax romana, but this peace was often maintained through brutal repression and exemplary punishment. You are the face of that brutality. While senators debated philosophy and poets composed verses, you were out there, covered in blood and grime, doing the state's dirty work. They needed you. They relied on your grim skills to enforce their laws and maintain their power. But they would never acknowledge you as an equal, or even as fully human. You were a function, a tool, a stain. What about the rare occasions when things go wrong in a different way? Say a reprieve comes at the last second. A messenger gallops in waving a pardon from the emperor. You're there, axe raised, victim on the block. The sudden halt, the anticlimax. Is there relief? Or just a weary sigh before you clean your tools and wait for the next one? Does it even register as a human saved, or just a task postponed? The level of desensitization required to simply function would be profound. You'd have to build walls around your emotions so thick that nothing could penetrate them. And the equipment, beyond the obvious tools of execution, you'd likely wear some kind of functional, drab clothing. Nothing that draws attention, yet it becomes a uniform of sorts, instantly recognizable and fear-inducing. Maybe a leather apron, stained with things you don't want to identify. Sturdy boots, because you're often standing in unpleasant substances, no gleaming armor, no insignia of rank. Your badge of office is the dread you inspire. Consider the sheer volume of work. Rome was a vast empire, and its justice system, while sophisticated for its time, processed a lot of people. Add to that the periodic persecutions, the suppression of rebellions, and the demands of the arena, and you have a steady stream of clientele. This isn't an occasional gig. In a large city like Rome itself, or in a busy provincial capital, you could be occupied several days a week, sometimes with multiple executions in a single day. It's a relentless grind of death and suffering. And what if you, the executioner, fell ill? There's no sick pay, no understudy readily available who isn't equally despised or incompetent. The state still needs its sentences carried out. Do you drag yourself to the execution ground, feverish and weak, and try to swing an axe? The consequences of a botched job due to illness could be severe. It's a precarious existence in every sense. Your own health, so crucial for your physically demanding job, is as vulnerable as anyone else's in an era without antibiotics or proper medical care. But you have the added bonus of being someone no respectable physician would want to treat. The isolation is a recurring theme because it's so central to your existence. You eat alone, or only with your family who share your taint. You walk alone. You work amidst crowds, yet you are utterly solitary. Even the soldiers who guard the condemned and the execution site likely keep their distance from you, interacting only as strictly necessary. They might share a joke amongst themselves, but you're not part of that camaraderie. You are the Omega, the ultimate outsider, performing a service that everyone wants done but no one wants to do or be near. Let's imagine the end of your day. You return to your squalid home, the metallic tang of blood still in your nostrils, the screams still echoing faintly in your ears. You wash as best you can, but the stain feels more than skin deep. It feels like it's seeped into your soul. How do you face your family if you have one? How do you find any peace, any respite from the horrors you've inflicted and witnessed? Perhaps you don't. Perhaps you just endure, day after dreadful day, until your own life ends, likely as unceremoniously and unmourned as those you dispatched. There was no retirement plan, no pension. You worked until you were too old, too weak, or too broken to continue. And then what? You'd likely die in poverty and obscurity, still bearing the stigma of your profession. No grand funeral for you, no noble epitaphs. Your legacy is one of fear and disgust, a footnote in the annals of Roman justice, if you're mentioned at all. The role of the carnifex also sometimes included torture to extract confessions or information. So, it's not just swift death. It's the methodical infliction of pain, the rack, the thumbscrews, or Roman equivalents, flogging, burning with hot irons, all designed to break a person's will. You need a strong stomach and a distinct lack of empathy, or at least the ability to suppress it entirely. You are the state's sanctioned sadist. How do you reconcile that with any sense of your own humanity? The answer is, most likely, you don't. You simply become what society has designated you to be, a monster in their service. Think about the condemned who were Roman citizens from noble families, perhaps caught on the losing side of a political power struggle. They might face you with stoic disdain, seeing you as the lowest of the low, the final indignity in their fall from grace. Their contempt would be palpable. You, the instrument of their demise, are also the object of their final scorn. It's a multi-layered hell. You're not just killing them, you're absorbing their hatred and society's fear. And the belief in ghosts, in the angry spirits of those unjustly or violently killed, manes, as the Romans called them, these spirits were thought to be particularly vengeful. You, the one who shed their blood, would be a prime target for their supernatural retribution. Every unexplained noise in your hovel, every shadow in the corner of your eye, every nightmare could be interpreted as the restless dead seeking their revenge. You live in a world not just physically grim, but spiritually terrifying, haunted by the literal ghosts of your profession. You might engage in all sorts of rituals, wear amulets, say prayers to chthonic deities, all in a desperate attempt to protect yourself from the spectral consequences of your daily work. The sheer contrast between the grandeur of Rome, its magnificent temples, its forums, its aqueducts, its triumphs, and your own sordid, blood-soaked existence is almost incomprehensible. While emperors were being deified, you were wrestling with corpses. While poets wrote of love and glory, you were washing blood off your axe. You inhabit the city's underbelly, the dark mirror to its shining facade. Without you, and the fear you represent, perhaps that grandeur couldn't exist. But that's a philosophical point no one is making to you as you drag a body to a common grave. Even your tools, if they broke or wore out, wouldn't be easily replaced. You're not getting a budget from the Senate for a new axe. You'd probably have to buy it yourself, or have it crudely repaired by a blacksmith who might charge you extra or serve you last just because of who you are. Every aspect of your life is made more difficult by your profession. It's a constant struggle, not just with the condemned, but with the very society you serve. The arena, again, deserves special mention. It wasn't just about killing, it was about spectacle. Sometimes, elaborate mythological scenes were reenacted, with condemned criminals playing the roles of tragic figures who meet gruesome ends. You might be involved in setting up these macabre theatricals, hoisting someone onto a stake to be mauled by a bear, representing Prometheus, or dressing a woman as Dirce to be dragged to her death by a bull. You're a stagehand in a snuff theatre, making sure the props, living, screaming humans, are in place for the grand finale. The creativity of Roman cruelty knew few bounds, and you were its technician. So, if you're still with me, if you haven't already decided that being a Roman executioner is the absolute worst job in history, consider this. You have no escape. There's no witness protection program, no changing careers. Once an executioner, always an executioner. The stain is indelible. You are marked for life. Even if you manage to save some money and move to a remote village where no one knew you, how long before your past caught up? A chance remark, a familiar scar, the haunted look in your eyes, someone would figure it out, and the shunning would begin anew. The Romans, for all their engineering marvels and legal codes, had a deeply brutal side. Their entertainment was often bloody, their justice unsparing. The executioner was the nexus of these traits, the necessary cog in the machine of state-sanctioned violence and spectacular punishment. You weren't seen as upholding justice. You were seen as tainted by its dirtiest, most visceral application. While the magistrate who condemned a man might still dine in polite society, you who merely carried out the sentence were an outcast. It's a profound hypocrisy, but one that allowed Roman society to function, to distance itself from the ugliness it decreed. You would likely develop a very bleak view of humanity. You see people at their absolute worst, the cruelty of the crowd, the terror of the condemned, the cold indifference of the officials. There's little room for faith in human goodness when your daily bread is earned through human suffering. Your world is stripped of pretense, reduced to its most brutal essentials: power, fear, pain, and death. And you are at the very heart of it, the unwilling priest of a dark religion. So, when you picture ancient Rome, with its gleaming marble and triumphant legions, remember the shadows, remember the cramped, filthy hovels outside the Pomerium, remember the stench of blood and fear that clung to the carnifex. Remember the man who had to wash that blood off his hands and clothes, knowing he'd be doing it all again tomorrow. Remember the absolute, soul-crushing, isolating reality of being the one nobody wanted to be, but everyone, in some dark recess of the social contract, needed. The truth is, being a Roman executioner wasn't a career path. It was a sentence in itself, a life sentence of horror, disgust, and profound loneliness, played out on the public stage for a society that simultaneously demanded your services and despised your existence. You weren't just ending lives, you were absorbing the darkness of an empire, one brutal act at a time. So, as you drift off tonight, perhaps spare a thought for those individuals, trapped by birth or circumstance in one of history's most thankless and horrifying roles. Their names are mostly lost, their experiences unrecorded beyond the brutal facts of their profession. But they were there, a constant, grim reminder of the price of order and the depths of human cruelty in what was, for many, a very unforgiving world. The glamour of Rome was built on many foundations, and one of them, undoubtedly, was the blood-soaked earth at the foot of the execution block, tended by a man who wouldn't last a day by modern standards, not because he was weak, but because we, hopefully, have evolved a little beyond needing his particular, terrible skills to feel civilized, or at least we've gotten better at hiding it.